Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Talk Punch. Thanks so much for joining us. Now, whether you're watching us on YouTube or you're listening in on the audio version of the podcast, make sure go ahead and subscribe. Then come back here every Wednesday, see what we're talking about. Kind of like this week's topic, we are talking our top 3 Batman stories we would like adapted into movies. Now, in a previous episode, we did top 3 graphic novels that we wanted adapted.
Yeah.
And we purposely left off Batman. Because
That's right.
we said,
because
you know
we
what?
both happen to be very big Batman fans.
Yeah, Tudong and I are big Batman fans. So we said, you know what? I bet we could come up with a list of just Batman stuff. So that's what we're doing. It's a list of just Batman stories. Batman. I'm wearing my Brody Man Batman shirt.
Okay, I'm wearing my Batman shirt right here.
There you go.
I always wear this when I'm a substitute.
Now, we are still a man short. Mr. Charlie is still on paternity leave with his new baby. But I am Brody Hanson, joined by...
Tudong Dylan.
Go.
I don't have the guns that you have, bro, so I can't do one of those over here. That's right. So, bro, what exactly was your criteria when it comes to these 3 Batman graphic novels, turning them into movies, adapting them, into movies or TV series?
So I did have a little bit of criteria that I was working. So
nice.
I decided when making my list, I was going to do one that I wanted a live action TV show. Like an HBO Max exclusive TV show under that control, under that umbrella.
Would it be an ongoing series or limited series?
Limited series, not ongoing.
Nice.
I have one that is for a DC animated movie.
Interesting.
And then I have one that is a live action movie. I like the DC animated movies, and there's a little sprinkle of interest that you may be seeing episode of our favorite anime. I now have to make sure. Animated. I now have to make sure that I schedule that accordingly. Because if I schedule that one to come out first, this is going to make no sense.
Very true. Very true.
Tudong, how did you make your list?
I'll be honest, for this one, I actually chose, one was one of my favorite all-time Batman stories. Another one is one that I guess one is one of my favorites. Somehow or another, it actually brings some warmth to my heart and then just crushes it. And I mean, it might be a series. I don't know. It would have to be, or a series of movies. All of them I kind of pictured live action. Some of them I wanted. One could be more of I guess another series. I mean, they're harsh ones. They're not the easier, family friendly kind of thing. Okay. These are serious ones that they'd have to put on HBO Max. And I mean, I'd love to see this live action, whether it be movie or whether it be TV. Some of them are a bit longer. They could go TV. One of them doesn't really need to be that long. So, I mean, these are just some of my favorites that I'd like to see. Sometimes I mean, one of them or another, maybe even one of them, I think it has been adapted to an animated.
Okay.
But I'd like to see it live.
All right. I have a feeling I know what one of yours is.
But interesting.
Let's get right into it.
Right. There we go.
All right, Tudong, I believe you, sir, are up first.
Nice. Well, I also took out the actual hard copies of these. And number 3 is one of my favorite of all time, and that is Batman Hush.
Thought about putting this.
Favorite of all time. It's a two-parter. At least that's how I had gotten it. And I actually, bro, I think you're the one who told me about this initially, and I absolutely love. First off, his relationship with Catwoman. Batman, actually, we see him in a relationship, trying to be in a relationship, and the one thing that is the toughest for him, and that is trust. And you see him with that trust, and he's struggling with it, and he's got like an old childhood friend come back into his life, and he goes through every single one of his most famous villains, his most famous friends who may accidentally have been brainwashed and turned into a villain. This also got turned into an animated one. Is that right?
It did. The animated was not as good as the comic.
Yeah, see, that breaks my heart because this is such a great story. I mean, this is where you really get Batman with a lot of his Bat family and their relationships with Robin, with Nightwing. They like to kind of do a thing where Jason Todd comes back and it starts the whole Red Hood kind of a thing where he's alive again. I liked that it was touched upon, but I don't like when they. I don't know if you know this, but they kind of retro graded it and made
They
it
did.
like, oh, he was kind of there, but then he switched. I That is preposterous.
Well,
Goes against the
it
entire
was.
thing.
I don't know if we wanted spoilers, but it wasn't actually Jason Todd in this
I
story.
know it was. I know, but they like to say like, oh, he started off Jason and then he switched to Clayface, and it's okay if it's a spoiler because people, this is one of those that you should read. This you have if you want to learn about Batman and how he thinks and what he does. This is all of it right here. You see what he's thinking, you see what he's feeling. He's going through feelings he's never had.
So is this one that you're wanting to be a show, or is this one you're wanting to be a movie?
This one I could do with maybe like a two-parter for a movie.
Okay.
But I mean, it probably a two-parter movie. I mean, I think it would be better than that as a show. I don't want to see it kind of continue. It does end not on a cliffhanger, but it does end with things a little bit in the air, and I'm fine with that because that's Batman for you. He's changing. Things are good, things are bad, but he's still going to keep going. There's no definitive end. But there will be with that movie.
Yeah. Also, Hush was a really cool new villain, and the
That's
comic
also
had Jim Lee art, which was. I would be
I love
curious. How do you translate that so that the art would be bring out the art in live action? Probably couldn't. But
You'd have to go with the colors.
I just love Jim Lee's art. I would want that to be somehow translated. No idea how they do it. No idea. But
Yeah, that I agree with as well. But you'd need some like a visionary director, like a real with a strong color palette, stuff like that along those lines. It is by far one of my favorite stories
it's
and
also one of
representation.
mine. I had no idea how they'd translate it, so I didn't put it on my list. So this is
Ah,
not on my list.
not on your list.
But
Okay. All
what
right.
is on my list
Yeah,
is
number three.
now
Oh,
this is my TV show. I would want this to be a TV show. This was
interesting.
this was I loved this comic. It was such a neat new idea of Joker turning good and becoming the
Yeah,
good guy and turning everybody against Batman. I thought it was so neat. And you'd have the political side of it, you'd have kind of the crime side of it. I think it would be a really neat
yeah.
show. And
Mhm.
being a show, you could have that slow burn of hey,
That's true.
you've got Jack. You know, is Jack a good guy? Is Jack a bad guy? Let things kind of, you know, start to boil, and then you have like some amazing season finale. I think this could go maybe 2 seasons. I know there were 2 volumes of this, so
Are
maybe
you? Would you want it to continue, or would it be a limited series? Because
no.
it 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 ends very definitively.
I think just a limited series. I don't think it needs to go on. I think you tell the story and you get out. There's no reason to drag it on past what the comic is.
Makes sense. That makes
But
sense.
but I
And it's a really good ending. Like that's an X. Like wow,
it is.
that ending was
So it's
heartbreaking, is to say the least.
I know. I remember I finished reading this and I text you right away. Dude, on,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
gotta
yeah.
get this.
I remember that.
Um, and it's actually right behind you. I see it sitting right behind
That's
your
true.
shoulder, right there.
It actually is. That's
Other
right.
side,
Right,
other
right.
side. There it is.
Oh,
There it is,
yeah,
right there.
right next to the Evil Dead one. Evil Dead 2. That's right.
Right
Right.
next to the Necronomicon.
Necronomicons, all two of them.
Yeah. But this,
Excellent
but
choice.
this, I think this would be a really neat show. I would really like to see this. I don't think I'd want to see a movie, and I don't think I would want to see the animated stuff. But I think a live action show would be really neat to see.
That would be great. That's an excellent choice.
All right, moving on to number two.
Number two, my number two.
For number two,
This was an interesting one. This one I almost forgot about, and
I
it
knew,
always gets
I,
forgotten about.
I knew this was going to be on your list.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Now, this one I think could be a seriously disturbing movie. It's got the picture. I could put it down here. This is actually a seriously disturbing Batman graphic novel because It's one of the first times I actually saw where it says like, "Hey, maybe this shouldn't be for kids." And Batman basically he hears about, hey, some homeless are not there's not as many homeless on the streets as there used to be. And Batman looks into it, and people are like criminals are getting butchered. And there's a it's amazing all of the things, but you would have to make it a movie, and it would be very, very rated R because
That would
he
be a
gets
tough
taken down
movie.
into the sewers and he gets tortured and brainwashed, and he has unbelievably ridiculous hallucinations the entire time. And I mean like killing bad guys kind of hallucinations where he's like, what am I doing here? Am I killing the Joker with an axe, or am I chained to a pipe? And not one of those James Bond pipes that break and you just get right out. And not one of those Mission Impossible pipes where there's for some reason you can go high up above and the pipe doesn't connect. He doesn't get out. He doesn't escape. He gets brutalized. He gets taken to his limits. And the fun thing about this is that this one was actually kind of mentioned in Death of the Family. He's like, hey, after the main villain kind of goes, he's like, I'm not back to 100% quite yet. He mentions it, and it like Hush is the same way. Both of those are actual in the regular continuity of it, which is interesting because usually I veer a lot towards, if we're doing adaptations, I veer towards Elseworld kind of stories.
Sure.
But with these two, I love these two so much. And Jason Todd is even in the cult, kind of towards the end. He doesn't rescue Batman in any possible way, but he does help him. And it also gives us the things that showed Christopher Nolan. It also, I mean, you came out with like a Tumblr kind of a Batmobile,
Okay.
very similar to the Dark Knight Returns. Um, he's like, hey, I'm taking things seriously. He's got missiles, he's got like kind of like rubber bullets and whatnot.
Okay.
He even says like they'll. I think somebody shot like a missile at it, and even then, like it's a he takes things seriously in actual Gotham, not an Elseworlds Gotham, not a Dark Knight Returns
Sure.
Gotham, but the actual Gotham. And I mean, they take everything down completely. And yeah, Deacon was just he would drug his victims, and he would make them hallucinate, and then he'd have them follow him, and they believe what he believes, and he's sitting there half the time. Batman's like, no, I got to do what Dinkin says. I mean, because what he says is right. The totem pole told me so. He says those words of being brainwashed, and he's talking to Robin, and he's just like, he broke me. One of the first guys to ever break Batman. And he comes back because he's Batman.
That would be a dark movie.
Very. Not for kids. Not for
that would be,
I found out.
That would be a tough sell for those WB executives.
That is true. That's true.
What toys can we make out of this?
Like, we cannot sell toys on this one. Can't sell toys. What was your number 2?
My number 2. Now this is my animated movie.
Right.
I have no idea why they have never made this into an anime. They've done the Death and Return of Superman twice. Well, they did the Death of Superman twice. Twice.
That's true.
We've got 2 animated movies. This is like made for an animated movie. And I don't think it could be live action. I think that Bane in particular is just somebody who I think is so hard to do live action, because in the comics he is so big. Right, like, without getting into CGI and stuff like that. But for an animated movie, I think that this could do it. And they've come out, a lot of these animated movies now have been PG-13. They put out a couple that are rated R. Like, it doesn't have to be a cartoon fuzzy story. It can be, Bane kicking the snot out of Batman. And this, go on.
Uh-huh. I was curious, would you end it at with this particular, you say an animated movie, would it end with the bat being broken?
I think this would be a 2-parter. So similar to what they just did with the Death of Superman.
Oh, and then
Reign of Superman. So they have the death where it ends at the death, and then they have a whole separate movie that's the Reign of the Superman. I think you do the same thing with this. I think
Just so you would do that with this. So what? But
yeah,
this would probably be your favorite part of out of that ones. Like that's why this has made your list.
yeah, yeah. I liked this story, and granted, I mean, I've got it over there now, but it's a fun story. Like this came out when I was about 10, so this was a big deal, right? Has it held up? I don't know. I haven't read it, but the
Yeah. Oh,
idea,
it's
of Bane breaking out everybody and just really wearing Batman down, and then going into his house and breaking his back, and then we've got the new Batman that comes out and way more brutal. I think I would really like to see it as an animated movie, and I'm just
cool.
baffled that they haven't put it out yet. For all the things that they have put out, I'm like,
Yeah.
how do we
Yeah.
not have Nightfall yet?
I always kind of assumed that they already did. They didn't do it yet, huh? That's really weird.
No, I
It can't
even
be because it's dark. I mean, the death of Superman. I mean, Batman doesn't even get killed in this.
yeah, yeah. So I don't know, but I would really like to see it. I
That'd be
they keep
cool.
putting out these movies. I keep kind of holding out hope that one day they're gonna say, okay, we're coming out with a 2-part Nightfall, and I'm like, that'll be
Nightfall.
great, but they haven't yet. So
That's
that's why it's on my list of stories that I want to see adapted.
very cool. That's an excellent story. That's a great story. Great Batman story, I
I
gotta
was
say.
just looking through it as I was making this list. I was flipping through because it's the 3
Yeah.
volumes. I was flipping through the first volume. I was like,
Seeing Batman, it's just exhausted like he
oh,
is nuts. And then he keeps going. He's like, I don't even care.
I know.
All right.
All
Well,
right, Tudong, you're number one.
my number one, and this would have to be a movie. It is dark, and it is an Elseworlds, and it is one of my favorite, and very few people have actually heard about it, and that is Batman Holy Terror. Have you read this yet, Road?
I don't know if I have.
Uh, Basically, folks, what this is an Elseworlds where instead of police, um, there is no separation of church and state. And Bruce Wayne, he trains because he thinks, hey, I'll be a an investigator or a whatever they kind of call them. They have their own kind of things at this point, but he trains and he figures that, hey, I don't want to be like upset and angry. I want to move on with my life, so I'll be a priest instead. And he does. He becomes a priest. And Commissioner Gordon, he comes over and towards the end, he's like, you haven't started yet. You would have made a great Inquisitor. That's what they were called. Great Inquisitor. It's too bad, you're going to be a priest. And as Bruce Wayne is going towards into as he's becoming a fully fledged priest with his own whatever place where he can be a minister, he figures out that there's actually an underground system of folks. I shouldn't say underground, actually, quite high up, more than just underground, of a system that actually will find people who are uh, against like their state or against what they're trying to do. And it
Right.
turns out that that's what happened with the Waynes. He thought, oh, it was just some criminal, so I can let it go. This particular version of Batman, but then he hears that they were actually put to death, and so he goes into the system. And there's a whole. This part does get kind of underground. He goes into the system, and as he does this, he sees that there are test subjects uh, with different sorts of special abilities. And it's funny because they make a big deal about the fact that the guy is a Jewish doctor, even though it's very, very Christian oriented. And he's doing experiments, and they have really kind of messed up versions of some of the characters, which is why it's an Elseworlds, because you get to see some
Yeah.
of the Flash, you get to see some of Aquaman,
Sure.
Superman. Some of them die horrible, pointless, tragic deaths. And I mean, it's just unbelievable how. I mean, I read this, when I was younger, and I saw it, and I was just like, "This doesn't make any sense." And none of this stuff is actually like canon. It's an Elseworlds, and it's a completely different place. And it made me really fall in love with the Elseworlds. I loved seeing the different take. Like this version of Batman, he's like, "Oh, it was just a guy trying to steal and rob, nothing big deal. Well, I'll let it go." Instead of the one in our world where he's like, I'm letting nothing go. But when he finds out that people voted on them being killed, he's like, I'm taking down the system. What's the system anyway? And he goes through it. I mean, I think it is unbelievable. It is dark, very dark, tragic, and unbelievable, like just absolute Batman
And
right
you would
there. And
want this to be a movie, a live action movie.
I don't. I mean, it's not. If you look at it, it's not a very thin one. It's thick. It's not thick. So this isn't an ongoing. I think this would make a good one-shot movie.
Okay.
Uh, he finds out there's corruption. He finds his dad apparently had played a demon in some theological play that for kids or whatnot. It was this bat suit, and look at it. Look at the symbol on his chest. It even has the ray of light coming up.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic. Whole bunch of it's a whole different world. I mean, it's great. It would be a really fun movie to watch. It'd be I don't know if I don't think it would be a similar vein because that's a little bit more Nazi. I was thinking V for Vendetta, but when I read V for Vendetta and then I watched the movie, I was like, all right, I could see they could turn this into a movie, but I mean, it would be a really, really strong one. Very dark, of course.
You coming out with those money making Batman movies.
Money making Batman, yeah. Hey, and lots of people would appreciate it. People keep talking about, hey, we'll make these movies or whatever for millennials or Gen Ys, but they forget about us Gen Xers. We still watch movies.
I think I don't know if I've read. I think you've been telling me about it for so long. I think you've created a Mandela effect for me where I honestly can't remember if I've read it, if I've picked it up because you told me to, or if I just know it because of you telling me.
But the next time I see you, I'm going to have you read it because I mean, like I said, it's not very thick. It's not like you're reading the Cult or anything or Hush, where it's a couple of volumes. I'll have you even if you don't buy it. But I mean, it is an excellent purchase. It's an excellent read, and it is an excellent. It would be an excellent movie, hopefully. That'd be nuts to see Bruce Wayne preaching in the church, and then even you hear in his mind, his notes. He's like, "Yes, I'm going to preach all of this, and I hope everybody has this. But then, dark at night, I'm going to be going through the system." And I'm like, "Oh yeah." Yeah. And then he finds out, and he's like, "Hey, I don't even know if I can take down the system." And he meets a guy in the whole thing. He's like, "I'm taking it down." He's like, "Well, all these people voted, so I don't know what you're gonna do." And he's like, "Well, then I'll take the whole system down," because he's Batman.
All right, sounds good. Well,
I'm curious. Your number one.
my number one.
It will shock you.
It's the Court of Owls.
Oh.
Now I know there's a bunch of rumors that the Court of Owls could be a part of this new movie that's coming out. Nothing's confirmed. They haven't confirmed it.
Really?
There's
Did you
rumors.
hear that? I never heard.
Yeah, there's rumors and stuff. And I know that this is going to be a part of the new Batman
mythos.
No, what do they call them? Gotham Knights. I think it's the Gotham Knights video game is going to use the Court of Owls.
Okay.
But this is such a cool story. Let's have like this secret organization. And yes, I know there's been a secret organization that's been living behind the scenes of Gotham, and nobody's ever heard of them until whatever. It's super cool, right? All these people who wear these creepy owl masks. You've got Talon there. You've got this whole lineage of Court of Owls going back, and being involved with the Waynes. This would be a really neat. This would be my movie. So this is my live action movie.
Movie.
Let's just adopt it because you can just have Batman, and it's just a cool Batman. You don't have to change a whole lot. Let's get a story where you have this behind the scenes presence, this group that's kind of pulling the strings with Gotham, and they've got politicians, all this stuff, and Batman is.
Didn't Dick Grayson try to be initiated in that?
That was something that they were trying to do. They were kind of like grooming him to be Talon. So there's all this stuff, and it would just be a really neat movie because it involves action. It's got him having to do detective stuff. You've got like Gotham City. Gotham is essentially like a character a lot of times, and so he's having to like go throughout Gotham and having to find all these layers, and there's all these different Talon nests that are all over the place. So I think that this would be a really neat movie. You get some twists in there, and turns, Yeah, this would be a really good one. And like I said, we could get a little bit of this in the new movie. I'm not sure, but But when
I've got to say that like the sequence when Batman is kind of caught in their
they're like
maze or their
labyrinth,
or whatever they kind of have there, I will definitely say like I had to read it a couple of times because I was just like, all right, I got to put this down because when he looked at pictures of himself and he was like, he sees different pictures of himself, like, oh, this is you in like 3 weeks, and he's like, what the heck? And he's like dying in them. I was like, why is he seeing? He can't see this. He shouldn't
yeah,
be seeing this. This is 3 weeks from now. Why is he looking at a picture of himself and he's dying? I thought that was really creepy.
yeah,
That would scare the hell out of
he goes insane at one point, and
me. Understand?
in the comic book you're reading upside down, and you're doing
Yeah.
but yeah, but just like the overall story, and there's a couple
Great.
volumes of it. You get Court of Owls, you get City of Owls. So I think there's enough that they could pull it into nice.
Now, do you think this would be a good movie storyline in, let's say, a current continuum kind of a thing, like where you're like, hey, if he comes back for another one, I could see his character, and the next one is like Batman, Court of Owls.
Oh yeah, I mean, so you're talking about like the Robert
Good
Pattinson
adapt.
movie.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, this could totally be a sequel, even if they planted some seeds in this one of just a couple things here or there, maybe an owl mask in the background or something like that.
Oh
And then
yeah.
you revisit that in a sequel. This could very well be a sequel to this current series.
That would be
would
that
dig
would
it.
really
I
fit
would
just the
dig it.
tone that they're doing.
All right, well, there's my number one. Two Dog, did you have any honorable mentions?
You
Any
know, it's good that
backups?
you asked. I do have an honorable mention. It is one of my favorite stories. I know they kind of did an adaptation to it, but I wanted to see something that was a little bit more more of a direct adaptation, and that is Batman Year Two, where
The
if you'll
Reaper.
notice, he has got a gun. As a matter of fact, and you even see his logo is cut in half because the old vigilante before Batman. That's right. Oddly enough, there was one before him, and he was brutal. Comes back.
Oh,
Batman doesn't know what to do with himself because it's only his second year, which makes sense. Just like the Pattinson one, it's supposed to be like his second year.
yeah,
That's an excellence. I like. Have you read that
I
before?
have. Yeah, that's a good
I like that with the Reaper. Oh, the Reaper was nuts. When I read that,
one. I even
I
have some
actually
of the
started.
original comics from that.
You do? Wow, That's cool. I only have this graphic novel, but that's one of those that I always kind of like. I thought maybe a Death in the Family, or even one of my favorites is The Lonely Place of Dying, because those are great. We got Robin, you got Nightwing, you've got Batman. Right after Jason Todd's dead, those would be some of those as well. Those would be really tough though, and they already kind of did Death in the Family.
They did.
I haven't seen that. Have you seen that?
I have.
Good.
Watch our top 3
Yeah. There you go. That's right.
find
That's
out
right.
what I think of. All right.
And that's another way of saying you should see some of these other videos that we have.
All right. Well, sounds good. Yeah, these are good ones. I would love to see all of these. The more Batman, better.
Yes.
Do I actually think the more Batman, the better? I don't know. I love seeing
Well,
Batman.
I mean, let's not.
As long as it's done well, the more Batman, the better.
More Batman, the better. I agree. As long
All
as
right.
it's done well, making sense.
Tudong, take us home.
Folks, if you would like to see some of our other videos, whether I am in it or whether the boys are in it or whether all three of us having a three-way are in it, you go ahead and right underneath this right here, go ahead and see some of the past videos, and otherwise underneath Brode right over here, over this way, you can click subscribe and come back every Wednesday because you never know what topics we have. They'll shock you to your core.
To your core.
You won't know what to do with yourself. Hands.
See you guys later.
See ya.